Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I recently came across a study about men dropping out of the workforce, and so I wanted to ask my male friends and just guys online what they thought about this and why they think this is happening. Why are men dropping out of the workforce? Why are men so depressed lately? Why are the suicide rates of men, why has that gone up? And so obviously this is a topic that is near to my heart because I have a lot of men in my audience, and I have a lot of friends that are men. My best friend is a man, so I wanted to talk about it. So anyways, okay. I'm going to bring up the study, and then I'm going to read um, some of the responses I received. So I put out the link to the study on 3 different places, on Telegram, on Gab, and on the Fediverse, just asking men to look at the study, read it if they had time, and then let me know their thoughts of why men were leaving the workforce, what they thought the reason for that was. And I got some really interesting responses. So first, I want to bring up the study. So here is the study. I had this archived. It's from Fortune. It was behind a paywall. So I will include in the video description the link to the archived version of that. So everybody has it. Okay, so actually, real quick, before we get into this, I just want to take a moment here to shill my documentary. As many of you know, some of you may not know, but now you're going to. I am working on a documentary about the Michigan plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. It is called Kidnap and Kill, an FBI Terror Plot. And if you'd like to see the trailer for that documentary, if you would like to make a donation to our fundraiser, we are fundraising to complete the project. If you like the trailer and you want to support it, you can do this now. You can find all of this stuff if you go to RadixVerum.com, my website, which is currently under construction. You'll find links there for all of the ways you can donate to me. There will be the Give, Send, Go fundraiser for the documentary. You'll find that on the website, and you'll find the trailer there, as well as a way to contact me if you would like to get into contact with me. So anyways, I just wanted to put that out there because I always forget to bring it up, and it's so important to me. I'm so proud of that trailer. I am, so happy about the feedback I've received from it. I'm so grateful that so many of you have helped me, have helped with fundraising so I can complete that documentary and get it done. By the end of this year, I'd like to have it done. So any bit helps if you're able to. I really appreciate it. Okay, so here is the article. Men are dropping out of the labor force because they are upset about their social status, according to a new study. So, I mean, okay. I think that we should note that the person who wrote this article is an Asian woman, and I think that Asian women have a bias when it comes to stuff like that, because this hyper concern with like social status, just saying, tends to be an Asian thing, which is why they're such hard workers. Okay, so anyways, yes, we're not going to read this full thing, but I will read parts of it, and then I'll read to you guys the replies that I received from some of the men online. And well, we'll get to it when we get to the responses. The job market in the US has remained hot this year, yeah, right? Despite the Federal Reserve's best efforts to cool it down, and unemployment is just at 3.7%, close to a 50-year low. I'm not buying it. I'm sorry, but no. We're already starting off this article with like nonsense. Men without 4-year college degrees between the ages of 25 and 54 have left the workforce in higher numbers than other groups, and they're leaving in part because of their perceived social status. relative to better educated men of similar age, according to a new study from Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. Well, guys, like, how do we feel about the Federal Reserve other than it should be abolished? The full Federal Reserve, not just the one in Boston, but the whole system. The whole central banking cartel and the certain groups behind it. Anyways, non-college educated men have seen their pay shrink by more than 30% since 1980 compared to the average earnings of all other prime age workers. So wait a second. Working class men have seen their pay shrink by more than 30% since the 80s. Wow. So you mean the poor get poorer in our country? Never would have guessed that. Their weekly earnings have declined 17%, while those of college-educated men rose by 20%, adjusting for inflation. That earning loss has caused a decline in their social status, prompting them to walk away from work entirely. Ping Wei Wu, author of the study, wrote, I'm probably saying that name wrong. Pingui Woo. Woo. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to make it fun for you to go through this stuff because it is actually really important. For many workers, a job not only offers financial security, but affirms their status, which is tied to their position relative to their age peers in many social outcomes, Wu wrote. The study found that the decline in earnings for non-college educated or working class men over the last 4 decades has increased their likelihood of leaving the labor force by nearly half a percentage point. That also accounts for 44% of the increase in their exit rate. So this study is over like a small percentage, I guess, but obviously even that makes a difference. Even though the pattern of men withdrawing from the labor force dates back several years, it has been more pronounced in recent years, as a number of men who left the workforce during the pandemic chose not to return. It's not necessarily that they chose not to return. It might be that there's nothing to return to, or they just gave up trying to return. So that's unaccounted for. Nearly 89.7% of men between 35 to 44 years were looking for jobs or already working as of November. That's down from 90.9% before the pandemic. Younger white men, and I'll have you note that the W is lowercase in this article, of course, because it's coming from Fortune, were more likely to leave when their expected wages fell relative to their more educated peers, according to the Fed study. Unlike men, women have not seen the same level of decline in their wages based on education. Wait a second. Oh, I thought that women had it so bad because of the patriarchy and this like wage gap. It actually seems that they're doing better than men. I mean, wow, guys, shocking stuff. That group has seen a 32% increase in weekly earnings, irrespective of their educational qualifications. So women in general, regardless of whether they were non-college educated or had a degree, they saw increases in their wages. So, wow, I just find that interesting. Anyways, I want to move on, though, to some of the responses that I got. First off, I got a meme that says, cessio plebis, withdrawal of the commoners or cessation of the plebs, was an informal exercise of power by Rome's plebeian citizens, similar in concept to the general strike. During the cessio plebis, the plebs would abandon the city en masse in a protest emigration and leave the patrician order to themselves. Therefore, a cessio meant that all shops and workshops would shut down and commercial transactions would largely cease. Oof, big oof. I got somebody posted this meme as well. Quiet quitting, inflation adjusted work opt out. So I think that's funny. In China, they're doing the quiet quitting, and maybe that's something that I think that's something that the millennials are doing. I'm sure I've heard this term quiet quitting before. I like this one though. Inflation adjusted work opt out. I think that sounds a little bit better, you know? Okay, so, oh, actually, one more thing before I go to the responses from the men that I asked. That is just to add some, just to back some of this stuff up. And Mike Rowe, the guy who did the TV show Dirty Jobs, he has sounded the alarm about men leaving the workforce, the most chilling metric of all. He says 7 million able-bodied men are declining to look for jobs. This was in just, I think it was December. Yeah, December of 2022. So like 2 months ago. Fox Business host Mike Rowe warned Monday the labor force participation rate is the most chilling economic metric, citing millions of able-bodied men not working or looking for jobs. Okay, so he says there's a lack of appreciation for blue-collar work. I think that's a fair point. I thought this was very interesting. I don't think this chart gets the attention it deserves. This is the labor force participation rate for men. This is just around the 1950s, and it's just a steady decline. This is 2020. There was a dip, presumably due to the pandemic, but it's still continuing a downward trend. And then look at the women's one. It's almost like the reverse of the men's. So that I think is quite telling. And in the same time period, so men's going down while women is going up. Oh, equality. It's not actually equality, guys. This is just a preference, showing preference for one group over another, mirrored by prime age men. It's the young and old that are leaving the workforce and not coming back. So I thought that was very interesting. Here's another article from January of this year. Millions of men have dropped out of the workforce, leaving companies struggling to fill jobs. Quote, "It's a matter of our national identity. You don't say." A large number of American men of prime working age between 25 and 54 years old are not working or even looking for work, resulting in a major hole in the American economy. Yeah. More jobs than workers. Yeah, but what kind of jobs are they? They're not good paying jobs, right? You sent all the good paying manufacturing jobs overseas. That's a big reason why people are upset. The jobs out there that require workers are jobs that do not pay enough for anyone to live. Like, the cost of living is so high, it's just that they don't pay a living wage, unfortunately. So there's a thread here that I thought was fantastic. Nationally representative German sample. So let's not just talk about America, but men of the West in general. This thread says male sexual desire has decreased, especially for young men. Another piece of the puzzle of rising young adult sexlessness. Thread on this and a few related papers. So this, of course, does tie into male depression. When men are depressed, their libido goes down. So there you go. Men who are not living with a sexual partner are more likely to report having no sexual desire within the past week. This has increased between 2005 and 16. I also feel like there's some kind of conspiracy with like the plastics, and just I feel like men have been feminized and I think that all men, at least the modern ones, because of all these microplastics and stuff, they like have low T or something. They don't have the same level of like testosterone, energy, desire as like their fathers and grandfathers, which is sad. This indicates that the single and sexless male population is not entirely made up of men who desire sex and are being excluded from the sexual marketplace. Rather, libido for men may be decreasing on average. Men may be dropping out of the sexual marketplace on their own rather than being excluded. So just like apparently they're dropping out of the workforce, they're dropping out of the sexual marketplace also. This is really concerning, especially if you want to improve Western birth rates. These may be some of the juice is not worth the squeeze men. They are just less motivated to pursue sex and relationships. Systematic review from 2020. It's just a quick summary on this. Single men are more likely to experience different forms of sexual dysfunction. A recent systematic review of sexual abstinence in men, young men are abstaining more. Many of the reasons seem to be voluntary, and that could be a good thing. It could be religious reasons, like they want to wait till they get married, which I think is wonderful. A third of sexually abstinent men seem to voluntarily remain abstinent. 1/3 of adolescents avoided sex because of a negative relationship, not being comfortable with the partner, not wanting the relationship to progress too quickly, or having a partner who did not enjoy it. The perceived practice of faithfulness among sexually active unmarried men significantly increased the likelihood of sexual abstinence among youth. Men with lower levels of education and lower income had less sexual activity. Well, of course, because they're not making the money, and the women go for the men with the money, apparently. Incarceration or military service lowered the odds of being a virgin. Abstainers from alcohol and drugs were less likely to be having sex. That's also interesting. Religious youths more likely to abstain. Recent systematic review on causes of low male sexual desire. Depression is a libido killer for men, and male depression is high. That is very sad. Men with low sexual desire may also get in a mental spin and self-induced sexual dysfunction. They may feel less masculine and feel bad about it. Related to the masculinity crisis, perhaps. Lots of men out there experiencing either some form of unwanted sexual dysfunction or simply low levels of erotic thoughts and desires. 15 to 25% of men falling into male hypoactive sexual desire disorder territory. Oof. It may be counterintuitive that a large portion of the approximately 30% of young men who are going without sex may not be actively pursuing sex, and they might not want to have it. We tend to think all men want sex all the time, but a large percent of men have impaired sexual desire or libido. They may not want sex. And of men who do, many may be deliberately abstaining as well. I think that pornography also plays a role in that, but that's for a German sample. There's an article here, Depression in Men. It happens more than you think, and it looks different than female depression. Did you know the suicide rate for boys and girls is the same until 10 years old? 10 to 14, boys become 2 times more likely to die by self-yeeting. At 15 to 19, they become 4 times more likely to self-delete. And from 20 to 25, 5 times more likely to self-yeet. And then here is, why is male depression so often overlooked or misdiagnosed? Rob Henderson quotes the book Perspectives of Male Psychology to explain why. The clinical phenomenon of male depression is more than just anger management and is said to be characterized by externalizing symptoms such as irritability, substance abuse, fighting, and other risk-taking behaviors. So it can manifest in ways that just appear to be like addiction. So that's a problem. It could be that male depression is commonly overlooked because depression questionnaires typically don't ask about acting out symptoms of depression, and male depression is recorded instead as a substance abuse disorder or criminality. Okay, so now I will go into some of the responses I got. I want to read some of them because I thought they were very interesting. I'm going to read one from a friend of mine. All right, so let me pull this up. And again, it was asking people to respond to the original piece here, which was why are men dropping out of the workforce? And this was the response. Number one, the time invested into working for someone will be ignored altogether, or they will assume that is your baseline and increase your workload, even if you're already doing everyone's job for them. There is no purpose in working harder for a raise because you rarely, if ever, get them. When you do, the raise is not proportional to the additional workload that you've acquired. Eventually, other people who see how hard you work will work less hard because they see you pick up everyone else's slack. So again, your workload is increased. Regarding the new baseline, if you deviate from the baseline that you set, you will be castigated, given a pay cut, terminated, laid off, etc., especially since the COOF companies are retiring or terminating employees that have been there for very long times in favor of new people. They can force you to train and then pay them half of what you make. The corporate reshuffling of assets always goes toward putting more money in the pockets of those who are calling the shots, rather than reinvesting a percentage of surplus capital into their employees. Women in the workplace have been an absolute disaster. You are no longer allowed to crack jokes with coworkers because human resources will be breathing down your neck if someone who wasn't even part of the conversation overhears it, gets quote unquote offended, and reports you. This can also have legal ramifications depending on the circumstances. The bar for entry for white men is almost unattainable. There is no room for advancement in the company unless you are a BIPOC, Jewish, gay, disabled, female, or a combination of those attributes. Why would anyone want to work harder to prove they're dedicated when a new hire with a bachelor's in CUNTology can get hired directly into a position just by virtue of doing a couple years of school? It doesn't matter how much experience you have. Gone are the days where experience meant something over quote unquote education. And then he goes on to say, if I was ever an officer of a business, I'd do everything I could to keep my employees happy. I would take some percentage of revenue to give my employees better things. Happy employees are loyal, work hard, and enjoy their job. It blows my mind executives look past this, then wonder why employees are no longer giving a crap about the quality of their work. I thought that was fantastic. But I want to read some of the other things that I got, the other responses. So these are some of the responses from Gab. I said, I want to hear from men. Why are men dropping out of the workforce? One person said, not sure if it counts in the workforce numbers, but the only men I know in my circles that have left their jobs have done so due to them starting their own business, which I thought was fantastic. Another person replied, I only hear about men, quote unquote, dropping out of the workforce due to some feminist shill accusing them of bogus SH, not some status garbage. Another poster said, it's getting harder and harder to swim upstream, and there is virtually nothing to look forward to at the end. Another commenter said, 2020 proved who's essential. I hope many men woke up to the fact working for a company doesn't mean security. Starting one's own business is the only way to truly be recession-proof. I had another person, Arno Brecker Enjoyer said, an older man just told me this morning the 3 things it takes to enjoy your job. Number 1, enjoy the work. Number 2, enjoy the people. Number 3, it provides for your family. You want at least 2 out of these 3 or you will be miserable. I thought that was very astute. Another person said, I haven't really seen anyone leaving their jobs. I have noticed that on dating apps, women are earning over 80 to 90,000 on average, definitely out earning young men. That's a huge problem because these young women want to date someone either equal to them status and financial wise, or they want to date up because that's how women are. So that could be really bad for society in general. Whether you have a degree or recently joined trades, manufacturing, etc. So as for the social status question, women are looking down on men and do not see them as suitable mates. I make over 60K to start and could care less what a woman makes, but I know they won't be interested. It also seems like these girls got really good jobs directly out of college and have been getting paid high salaries for like 8 years now, whereas men don't find their path until later. And another person replied to that poster and said, this has a lot to do with fast path internship programs. I work with corporations and see the patterns. Corporations almost exclusively grab women and non-whites today for internship programs because they have to meet diversity quotas that are imposed on them by the federal government, or they get tax incentives for that. Regardless of competence, it is very rare that I see white men anymore in an area where white men are the best of the best in engineering. This fast path leads to those women and minorities to go on attaining high pay even though they're functionally incompetent and not fit for the job. Their high pay averages the equity reports to file to government, so the C-suite doesn't care about the damage. If you have an idea how close your average financial institution runs on fumes and is held together by duct tape on a verge of technological collapse every other day. Anyway, the disparity you see is no accident and not your fault. It's fully engineered by policy at the highest levels of these corporations and the government. There was another commentator that said, I'm still in the workforce, but planning on making an exit ASAP so my wife and I can start our homestead. Can't speak on behalf of other men, but that will be why I leave the workforce. I thought that was a beautiful comment. I love that idea. If you are able to do that, I mean, where can you go wrong? It's always beneficial to be self-sufficient. There's another person, Nam Nobis, responded and said, I'm working on the exact same plan. Members of my church and I are working toward an ideal of buying property and building a community sufficient village for us to live on. That is an amazing idea. And then that another person replied, it seems this is the best and most logical move forward, in my opinion. A person named himself said, well, I know at least one man that is sick of some people getting free passes at work. And then if he says something about the coworkers not doing their job and him having to pick up slack, he gets a call from HR. So because this is Gab in the Fediverse, I have to censor some of the language for this platform. But you can go to my pages and you can look at the responses and read them yourself if this is something you're interested in. I think it's fascinating. Another person, Zeldia said, in a past life, working at a Fortune 20 company, straight white males will be overlooked for diversity hires that are incompetent. I left due to that and found something that will benefit me more long term. Another commenter said, men are leaving the workforce because they've been incentivized to do so, demoralized and ridiculed by their own women. So why not be a stay-at-home dad while the wife makes 17 to 20K a month selling feet pics or doing some ridiculous dance to the edgiest new quote-unquote music, while pointing to rhetoric about how your husband's a CUCK, your daughters are becoming streetwalkers, and you're super proud of your son for transitioning. The West is sick. Another person said, bad jobs. I can testify to that. Cat Enjoyer said, I knew someone who dropped out to pursue more creative work on his own, but then again, his stay-at-home wife did enter the labor force at about the same time. Very interesting. I have another response. I'll be leaving my career in my prime to homestead. I'm not getting younger, and with what vigor I have remaining, it will be needed now. My wife will remain in the workforce. Then Williams said, I can't speak for others. I was forced out over the C-19 mandate for DoD contractors. Now, as a white male in my early 60s, I am unemployable in the traditional sense. Fortunately, I had spent over 10 years beforehand getting pretty much debt free. Otherwise, I would be completely screwed. Okay, so those are the responses for Gab, and now I'll read some of the ones from Fediverse, and then we'll end up and wrap up this video. I just find stuff like this so interesting. Larity says, the guys I know that have opted out of the workforce have done so because the investment of time isn't worth the return. Men need shockingly little to be happy. Listen up, ladies. So working 40 to 6 hours a week so your wife's boyfriend can buy you a Switch and then you can die without owning a house isn't worth it to them. So, let's see. Oh, where are some of the other responses? Hey, where'd they go? Oh my goodness. And they're gone. I'm sorry. Okay, so I found some of them. One person says society is in decline because progress is removing the natural defenders and builders of a society, men. So another person said, get entry level factory job doing dirty labor for $12.50 an hour. Have boomer supervisor who refuses to train anyone on doing the job because nobody showed him how to do it. Work is dangerous and team effort, so I must put safety in hands of diversity hires, get passed over time and time again for promotion, 8 months straight of mandatory overtime. Watched a white male intentionally insert his hand into rulers, crushing his hand so he could file workers' compensation and then get disability. Everyone in management is all sleeping with everyone else's wives. Everyone I work with smells like marijuana. Group health insurance with yearly increasing cost and deductibles. Insurance reps say stop going to the doctor so much. Go back to job breathing dangerous chemicals. I could go on. He continues and says, I knew a guy that had worked at this plant for 12 years. He cleaned the smokestacks. It's a four-man job, and he is basically rappelling up and down the walls of the stack, cleaning sections of the stack. Employer started hiring non-English speaking to save a buck, so he couldn't communicate how the job is supposed to be done safely or at all, really, because they didn't speak his language. He absolutely depends on at least one other person to keep him from falling to his death. After many close calls and his employer telling him that he gets paid to handle his crew, he finally quit. 1 month later, his employer was begging him to come back for almost double pay. Guy told his boss he could pay him the same, but he wants full authority to hire his own crew. His employer refused. So I guess the general gist here is that it's simply not worth it. Another person responds, the article mentioned the groups leaving the workforce, most non-college white men, have just been hit with a 30% pay reduction, but then just hand wave this away as them just being upset, quote unquote. That isn't a fair representation by a long shot. I expect they are giving up because they aren't getting fairly compensated for their labor, and if anyone notices at all, it is to crap on the men, so I can hardly blame them for just jumping ship and leaving the workforce. I do find it alarming because those are the very jobs that keep the foundations of our civilization running, and nobody is interested in fixing the rot. Another person replied and said, probably a lot, but off the bat I can tell you women never ever get us, quote unquote, in any meaningful way. So it's this poster is saying it's basically impossible for women to understand male suffering and men, and generally speaking. He says guys don't think about status the same way, at least not the ones you would like. Women will extrapolate male behavior by basically projecting themselves onto guys and say their model is very accurate. But it's only accurate for feminine weak men playing by the girls' social rulebook. There's some other things I can't say. The guys women want, the ones with strength and quality, don't think about status, quote unquote, the same way women do. They're content to stand alone as long as they're right. And then furthers the response. I know there's a lot to chew on here, but come on. The author of the study doesn't look like she's someone who's been to the oil fields. She's never put on a mask to watch someone demonstrate a weld. She's never ripped a 1/8 inch hangnail after getting solvents all over her hands. Listening to women about this when they describe blue collar men is like listening to a 5'2" obese weirdos on the incel subreddit when they describe all women as an inveterate, animalistic, nympho mercenary. Not enough experience, certainly not enough breadth to describe the phenomenon at play in any reasonable capacity. Men certainly aren't the ones looking at the douche down the street with a college degree making 30% more than them, feeling inadequate about quote unquote status. They may feel regret at not pursuing a different line of work, but any negative sentiments comparing themselves to other guys, something that's pretty rare to begin with, is nothing like the angst his wife feels when she talks to college guy's wife and hears, "Oh, so is your hubby still just welding?" And that is a really good point. And then another person replied and said it certainly couldn't be because prices have skyrocketed and the places most of us work went, quote, "We made record profits this year, keep it up." Oh, so we're getting raises? No, we can't afford that. That's really, really cool. Like, oh yeah, hey, we've made all this money overworking you during a vulnerable time, and we're not going to give you any of that. We're not going to give you a raise, nothing. Another person responded and said, "What reason do the bottom 30% to 40% of the social hierarchy of men have to work crappy jobs? They'll be invisible. So what reason do they have to take these low-wage, crappier, maybe harder jobs? They'll be invisible to most women, get nothing from the taxes they are forced to pay, and be told constantly how they are the reason for every problem in society." And then another person said, "Not everyone can be in the top 10% of perceived top men, no matter how society is. Society has to repudiate female hypergamy as a sinful anti-monogamy impulse, and it needs to do the same for man, WHORING." Very good point. And then another person says, what rankles me about reducing it to status, quote unquote, like it's anything like the way femme societies think of it. Status is silly, stupid, surface level stuff like titles, brand names, and outward indicators of success that are frequently worthless indicators of true quality. The package of things that this chick sees as status are real and immensely significant to keeping up our motivation to endure things we'd otherwise not. If I were single, I'd be ignoring the calls to head out and work again tomorrow after a week straight of misery, but I'm trying to build a family, so I'll suck it up and head out again so my lady can nest here in peace. To disreputable ladies and children of single mothers, they'll reduce that to, haha, you're just happy to have status and have people know you have a woman. It's about your ego. I don't care about that. I'd be just as content if I were the only human on earth, and our future children who could see and interact with her. I'd be content to walk around in public babbling to an imaginary friend, to the worried, hushed panic of everyone around me. I'll work because a week of BS, stress, and irritation was worth it when I stepped into the entryway and she hugged me and started excitedly telling me about all the little day-to-day minutia I missed. I'll head back out because I need that money to build a nest for her and us, not to impress anyone but ourselves. That's not status, it's joy. And true joy is what motivates a man. I thought that was a really good reply. Most of the other replies are very similar. There was one other one I wanted to read if I can find it, but yeah. Let's see. Oh my goodness. There's just so Many of them. There was a lot of responses to this, but some of it was just back and forth bickering. Um, if you're not putting out 100% backbreaking effort for bottom of the barrel reward and treated like crap and then having to smile about it and not complain, you're essentially doing nothing. Okay. Let's see. There are people saying that there were some responses saying they would like people to be more empathetic to men. I think that's a good point. Let's see. I don't see what an alternative is. Oh, there were also people saying that it would be nice if people that are more older in middle management, people of the boomer generation, understood the problems facing the younger generation. I think that that's a good point, although I do think that they get it for the most part. I think they understand. Where they mess up is when they say things like, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps or whatever, because like we all know that that isn't a thing. That doesn't work. That might have been a thing back in the day, but it's certainly not now. Not for women, not for men. There is just no more like, oh yeah, the American dream is within my reach or whatever. It's just no. Another person said, why should I work hard every day so some senior executive can buy a second yacht? Clearly, they must be depressed and need to hear more boomer talking points. Sorry, I only work hard when it's for me. Yeah, that was, in reply to somebody basically telling him that, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Let me see. Is there anything else I want to read here? Oh my gosh. I'll tell you, some of these replies are just, some of y'all are such spurgs. You guys turned this stuff into health threads. One person said the eternal Korean. Another person said that people doing these academic studies should be forced to intern as a quote unquote poor person for at least 3 years. They should have to live the life of poverty, to see it from the ground level, to experience struggles while realizing they aren't always these set upon victims of the system. They're just like the rest of us, often eating crap because of their own actions. Also, I think everyone benefits from being poor for a spell. It sets parameters in life. I think that's true. Another person says it's much easier to be confident and have no anxiety and feel no need to prove anything to anyone once you've accomplished a thing or two in your life. There was a something in here about wages have become detached from productivity and navigating the social gatekeeping institutions to high status, which often ends up being non-productive jobs, also necessitate you accept a lot of things that are clearly untrue. I think that's a very good point. That look, a lot of people don't want to play the game anymore, and for what? I don't think there's anything else that I really want to cover. I think that was it. There's one other person who responded and said to the person who wrote that article, men don't have feelings, they have wives. If men can't work to feed his family, then his wife has to. Men don't need to put up with a crap job that hires for diversity over skill or seniority. Women have feelings, irrelevant ones. No one cares if you are a girl boss who pouts when she doesn't get her morning latte. They don't care if you cry in your spacious, do-nothing office on the company dime because, quote, it's so stressful working here. And they really don't care that you save 15 cents a can by switching the break room over to soda water instead of Pepsi. Men will work twice as hard and make half the amount if the work is rewarding. Maybe, just maybe, men don't like being treated like crap. They don't like being told that they are that their race is a significant portion of their wage or lack thereof. They don't like being told that they can't have a living wage to support a family, buy a house, afford healthcare, dental, vision, make car payments, etc. And men really hate it when you tell them that the natural way of life, a man, woman, kids, is unnatural. This tactic is societal collapse for dummies, and most men see that. Men want nothing to do with an industry that supports being woke, which is why poorly managed companies go broke enforcing this stuff. All these companies have left is quote unquote diversity hires. So, anyways, I really I don't know. There's so many other responses here that I wish I could get to. Um, because they're all so good. They are also fantastic, but I can't, unfortunately. Oh, one more I'll read from Skylar. Everything worth working hard to afford is out of reach for everyone who wasn't born rich. Modest house in the suburbs, F you. We've built nothing but 500K plus McMansions over the past 30 years for rich boomers and foreign investors. And diversity packed into anywhere cheaper. 40 acres out in the country. F off unless you've got millions in cash lying around to outbid agribusiness. Furthermore, we've all learned that hard work doesn't actually get you anything but higher expectations and being given more work. Promotion, decent raise, best we can do is a crappy raise that doesn't keep up with inflation. An Applebee's gift card with your name spelled wrong around the holidays, and we've put a meeting on your calendar with your manager to discuss your performance numbers. See, the average employee in your role company 15 tasks in a week, but you're averaging 8 or 9. Never mind that we've deliberately given you all the hardest tasks and everyone is also constantly pestering you to fix their problems for them. We're going to have to put you on a performance improvement plan and deny all time off requests for the next 180 days. Yes, exactly. So I mean, I think that kind of speaks for itself. That is how I think a lot of men feel nowadays. And I think it's very sad. So there are answers to these questions of why men are exiting the workforce, why men are not why men are not having sex or have decreased sexual desire, and why they're just like opting out of society altogether. They're walking away from women, they're walking away from these crappy jobs. So, I think that the answer to that is to start listening to them. Why is this a problem? Also, something that didn't get mentioned in any of those comments that I read, but I think is important to add at the end here, is that the side effects of the sexual revolution are still being felt. The effects of moving women into the workforce, making them compete with men, that is all being felt. That drove wages down. And it just causes a slew of other problems when you have men and women in the workspace. There are problems with complaints of, oh, somebody looked at me wrong or made an offensive joke, so now we have to call HR and have sensitivity training. And just imagine being subjected to the kinds of like humiliating and bizarre things that human resources are doing now. Like, oh, let's hear another lecture about how these men are inherently evil and clearly the ones benefiting from privilege and running society. Meanwhile, the women are making more money than them, and all of the foreign hires, all of the people that have basically displaced them. It's just truly amazing. There is a confluence of things, though, that I think is to blame for this. So anyways, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this. As I said, most of my audience is male, although that is changing. There are women here as well. Thank you, ladies, for being part of the family. I would like to know what you guys think, women and men, about all the things we talked about in this video. And what do you think some of the solutions for this stuff is? Because for some of it, it doesn't seem like there's an easy fix or an easy solution. But those are my thoughts. Also, if you're interested, channel memberships are available now. So if you want to support my work, help your girl out, you can become a supporting monthly member of the channel. You will get access to custom emojis that are really cool. You're going to want to have those custom emojis. So just consider becoming a member of the channel. Yeah, it's fun. Do it. Everyone else is doing it. Ree!